discussion. So if you're looking for Adrian Crenshaw, InfoSec Jesus is next door. This is the final session of tonight, and thank you all so much for coming. This is the gentleman who has been, if you've been attacking the CTF environment, has been stymieing your attacks. And so if you're currently frustrated with that, it's his fault. If you'd like to know more about Kevin Cardwell's background, Google him. There's a lot of information out there. And if you'd like a good shot at the CTF environment right now, sit next to Raphael Mudge there at the staging area and get some tips, and he's not watching the game. Thank you, Kevin.
Doing more stuff? Oh, okay. When I'm away, that's when they're actually going to be doing it? Okay. All right, I want to talk to you about defense, because unfortunately, at the end of the day, we all got to defend. So what we're going to talk about is some myths. There's a lot of myths out there about defense, and we're going to talk about the hackers, stuff like that. The ingress and egress filtering, inbound and outbound traffic, hardening. Some reason some people do it, some don't. And the good and the bad. Memory analysis, what we have to do today to keep up with the modern threat. And some enhancements in Server 2008 and Server 2012. I actually give Microsoft some credit. Don't give them credit very often, but they have some good things in there now. And to talk to you about what I call out-of-the-box network design, segmentation, isolation. It's nothing new, but it's a concept that I think a lot of people forgot about. So this is what you can, if you start reading a lot of the posts, they say that the hackers were so good. The compromise was inevitable. That term I hate, APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, those types of things. Majority of the attacks are not sophisticated. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Okay. So, that's a myth. This is from the Verizon Data Breach Report. As you see here, 96% of the attacks in the 2012 report were not highly difficult. Alright, so 96% of the attacks. 97% of the breaches were avoidable through simple or intermediate controls. So there are things we can do to defend. The majority of the attacks are against weak targets. Alright? 2011, it was 94% servers. 2012, 54%. So it still goes to the adage, the servers have the data. That's what everybody's trying to attack is the servers. You need to harden and protect your servers. And we'll talk about methods you can do for that. What's changed is mobile. 71% of the attacks were mobile. Why? How many of you got a smartphone? Pretty much everybody, right? You realize that's a laptop in your hand? Powerful as most laptops? Now, how many of you have a smartphone have a VPN on it? See, not everybody. Everybody, you are on a computer device. If you're connecting anywhere here in the conference, you should be in a VPN. Always put yourself in a virtual private network. It's not perfect security, but at least it helps protect you some. How many of you got your smartphone and you have antivirus on there? Okay, good. So, but everybody should be 100%. Because your laptop, you've been protecting it for a while. You have to protect your actual smartphone the same as your laptop. Because this proves it. Hackers are starting to target the mobile platform. Because probably a lot of you, I know my wife, a lot of other people, you don't even get on a computer anymore. It's always the phone or the tablet. So that's why hackers have started targeting those. All right? 2012, it was 78% low difficulty. Why? Because of the mobile devices. It takes a little bit more work for the hackers to do the mobile devices. That's the good news. The bad news is there's tools out there that make it easy for you, right? The smartphone pen testing framework, other tools where I can send you a message. If you accept it and click on the link in the message, you just gave me a shell into your phone. All right? So there's all these things we have to deal with. But what you want to do in your environment is look at every segment on your network. Your ingress filtering, inbound. What is the inbound traffic to your network? All right? This is where I find a lot of mistakes. Almost all your organizations are implementing it, but you have to look at what actually you're allowing in, okay? Because that's your risk from the outside, the external threat. Security policy is going to determine it. I know it's always funny, but I go into organizations and say, show me your security policy. Half the time, hopefully they've got one, or they'll pull it off the shelf and blow dust off it and hand it to me. Okay? It has to be dynamic. Think about it. Our smartphones, all those types of things, technology continues to change. Your security policy has to keep up to date. All right? And it's simple, one simple check. No traffic arriving at the perimeter should have an internal source address. We call it a sanity check. No traffic arriving at the perimeter should be a private address. Should be public addressing, right? Them are some of the basic ones. RFC 2267 gives you guidance for filters to prevent denial of service attacks. If you haven't implemented these, this is the first thing you have to do. You want to implement what traffic is coming in and restrict it. Remember, take every segment, look at the inbound traffic to it. All right? Block your echo reply message as a broadcast address. Good news is, most of the vendors realize this. The Cisco's, most of the devices do this by default now, so that's good. That's a good thing for security. And then how many's heard of bogans? Some of you, several of you. If you haven't heard of them, look them up. These are bogeys. Bogeys that should never be received as a source address on your network. So you should never see a packet coming from these addresses. If you put that filtering in today, you will block, on estimate, the last study we've done, 64% of the traffic for malware uses bogon addresses. So as long as you block those addresses, you're mitigating the risk. Remember, we know there's no perfect security, right? Everybody agree? So what can we do? We reduce our attack surface. The lower we reduce our attack surface, the less risk we have, and it's easier to do our vulnerability management. Okay. Egress filtering. This is the neglected area. This is the area that it's outbound traffic. So since it's outbound traffic, everybody thinks what? It's going away. So I'm not going to look at it. This is why malware wins. You have to look at your outbound traffic. Okay? Most of your distributed denial of service attacks use a spoofed address. If you're doing good egress filtering, you don't allow any spoof traffic out, you can't be a broadcast amplifier. Okay? So these are all things we can do. Black hole routing. That concept is, if you have an internal DNS server, I don't allow any machine to do a direct DNS query out to the internet. It has to have a source address of your DNS server. If it does not, you drop it. Because majority, about 99% of the malware will do a direct DNS query to the Google 8.8.8.8, those types of things. So just by doing that, you will drop that traffic and you won't have that malware spreading like it is. Now, hackers realize we've been doing this, so some of the malware, about the 1% top malware, now will look for your internal DNS information and then use that to do the DNS query. But again, it's blocking the majority of the traffic. The other thing is, if you have a web proxy, all your web traffic should come from the source address of the web proxy. If it doesn't, you drop it. All right? Simple little things you can do. If you're not 24/7, I know this is a shock to everybody, but shut your perimeter devices, shut the access from the internal networks to the internet. The days have gone when we can leave it up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's too many vulnerabilities that come out. There's too many users going to click. We're never going to stop the users from clicking. They're always going to click. We realize that, right? We can't, that's why you can't patch the human. I can't go give them a software patch, update them, and they'll be good to go. Doesn't work that way. So always look at HTTP, SSH, HTTPS, those types of things. Look for attempts. Any attempts outbound, if you know nobody's there, it's malicious. All right, we use this a lot in the security operations centers that I've set up, where we know the banks, most banks don't work on the weekend, right? And their weekend's different than our weekend. Our weekend's Saturday, Sunday. Middle East is Friday, Saturday, and Thursday, Friday in some of the other countries. So what we do is we put a rule in that blocks all traffic from that subnet through the actual NOC at weekend. And if we see any traffic trying to come out, we go investigate it. We identified 150 malware infections one weekend, all right? Because if you're not looking at the outbound traffic, that's where all the malware is going. That's what it's using, is outbound traffic. Okay? If you are 24/7, then only monitor your critical systems. It's a very simple rule. None of your servers, in most cases, there's Swift with banking and stuff like that, but the majority of us, we don't need our servers to generate a SYN or an opening connection out to the internet. If it's generating that, it's been compromised. Remember from the Verizon data breach, we were looking at 96% servers, 97% until the mobile come. So as long as we block all that traffic going out from the servers, they might get compromised, but the data never leaves our site. Right? It's a very simple rule, and like a Cisco router, you just go in and say, don't allow any from this IP block of your servers, don't allow any SYN or opening connection requests. All right? Your server should never really talk to the internet. And if you have to, subscribe to a service and look up known malware nuts, right? There's services out there to do that for you. At the end, I have a couple of references and then a PowerShell script you can do a search on and download, and it allows you to put in malware domains right into a Windows host file. So your internal lookups, if they try to look up a malware domain, it will actually block it and black hole route it, all right? Web applications. This is the one that's going to get you in trouble because we have to have our web applications. But we've done a pretty good job of explaining how to write secure web applications. The OWASP, right? They've done a great job on it. If you have your databases, make sure you harden your databases. Oracle, all of the main vendors have hardening guidelines, right? In a little bit, I'm going to show you there's a 0-day on Oracle out this week. Anybody seen that? 0 day is an unpublished advisory, so nobody knows about it yet, but Oracle. But that means we've got another vulnerability in Oracle that we have to deal with. I'll show you that in a little bit. Okay, so if you can, upgrade your Microsoft servers to SQL Server 2008 and beyond, because Microsoft started learning that it's better to not run a system. So Server 2008 doesn't run a system anymore. It runs as a regular user, right? Those types of things. Web applications, we've been talking about this forever. SQL injection, all that type of stuff, cross-site scripting, but we continue to see it. So we have to figure out why. Everybody remember the Sony PlayStation hack? That was SQL injection. SQL injection, we told people how to fix it in 2006. So why do we continue to see it? All right, those types of things. Make sure your web applications are all tested, because that's the one thing that's public facing that's always going to be accessible to the internet, because that's how most people get their revenue. All right? Harden your systems themselves. You got the NSA guides, but some people don't trust the government. Don't blame you. And Center for Internet Security benchmarks are some that you can use too. But also, this is one you want to look into if you haven't looked at yet. Unfortunately, Microsoft hasn't really advertised it. And I heard that's because Microsoft might drop it at any time. But at least if you go look at it, the Microsoft Security Compliance Manager. It allows you to download benchmarks right from Microsoft, set a security policy, produce a group policy object, and then implement it across the group. All right? So if you look here, I've got policies for Internet Explorer, Microsoft Office, Windows 7, Windows Servers, 2003, 2008, Vista, all this type of stuff, even though XP. Even though XP is not supported for patches anymore, you still can get a benchmark and harden XP, so it's not such a wide, vulnerable target. So if you haven't seen these yet, you should get this because it gives you the capability to actually harden your environment just by producing a group policy object. If you want to know more about that, talk to me offline. Top 4 controls. This is what came out with the Australian Signals Directive. And what they found was if you implemented these top 4 controls, you would reduce about 85% of the known attacks. So right there puts you in the 15th percentile of missing that 85% of those attacks. When you look at it, other than application whitelisting, most of this other stuff is pretty normal. We've all talked about this in the past. So just by implementing these things, you're going to reduce that attack surface. Remember, there's no perfect security, but reduce that attack surface. Challenge the hackers. After 25 plus years on offense, I like to go into an environment and find it challenging. So please do. That's why we've got the capture the flag out there. If anybody wants to come out there, I'll put up a box and we'll harden it and let's see if anybody can take it down. Right? The majority of the attacks are against weak or not protected defenses. Another thing to do is disable the local admin account on domain computers. Only allow a domain login. Don't allow that local admin. So if the hacker actually finds a new vulnerability and exploits it, I don't get local administrator rights, right? Simple things. SANS took this and created their top 20 security controls. You see there's malware is number 5. So again, these are the types of things you want to look at. And they have very good guidance and references on how to implement these types of controls. But just implementing the top 4 will put you in only that 15%. 85% of the attacks are blocked by those top 4. So the good and the bad. Fox IT. Anybody use Fox IT? Wow, nobody use Foxit? Okay, good. Somebody does. Everybody uses Adobe? Why? It's like the most attacked platform out there, so why don't you use something that's not so popular to attack? I know we got to accept Windows because we're using Windows, Internet Explorer, or Internet Explorer, whatever you want to call the thing, right? But you don't have to actually go out and run Adobe all the time. There's other PDF readers, XPDF, that type of stuff. But it's funny because Foxit's one of the ones we like to use, and now look, there it is. and it's got a 10-day-old vulnerability, and this common vulnerability score in summary of a 7.5, meaning it's a high vulnerability. And then Alien Vault right beneath it. Anybody use Alien Vault? I always liked Alien Vault, great sim and all that type of stuff. But this is a 10. That's the most critical vulnerability you can have, and you see there's quite a few there. Now this site is a zero-day initiative from HP. So, who's HP have in the sim market? ArcSight. So you think maybe they're doing a little extra curricular attacks against Alien Vault, since Alien Vault now is one of their commercial offerings at Alien Vault? You know, I don't know. But it looks kind of weird there. These are unpublished. This is actually, if you go to zero-day initiative, right, you have to see this. What I've pulled up here, remember I said Oracle? May 2nd, a 0-day. So this is an upcoming advisory that none of us know about, but it's in Oracle right now. HP's got one. Samsung. Anybody got Samsung Android? Yeah, there you go. I do too. There's a 0-day on that. So again, this is why we want to protect that phone. Start encrypting it. At least it helps and gives us some more protection. How about F5? Anybody using F5 load balancing? Big vulnerability in that now. So again, our patch system's broken, right? We've gotten better at security. Hackers gotten better at hacking, and it's all we've got. But it's broken. The patch system's broken. We know that because what happens the second Tuesday of every month? Microsoft Patch Tuesday, or the hackers like to say Exploit Wednesday, right? Because we get to exploit now all the time. Because how many of you, when Patch Tuesday comes out, do you get your patches all done within a day? No. So every day that Patch Tuesday comes out that you don't have it patched, we now have exploits. And they have all these exploits they write and all those types of things. So instead of just this small group knowing about it, when Patch Tuesday comes out, the world knows about it. So this is why the patch system is broken. It's really the best we have, unfortunately. It's called residual risk, right? Risk we can't do anything about. And there's the site, the zerodayinitiative.com. Now these are the upcoming advisories. They have plenty of published advisories too. So it's a good site to go and look at. So this is what you have to do in your organization. Remember what I said. The inbounds and the outbounds. You have to know everything you have in your environment and then start tracking this type of stuff because it's constantly going to have vulnerabilities. Memory analysis. Because what happens is if you get compromised, what can you do? You got to start looking at memory. All right? So you got to run several tools to extract the information from running processes. You can look at the executable image, the commands to invoke it, the runtime, security context, DLLs, and all the other type of stuff. This is what you have to do today because antivirus, we call it the 80-20 rule. 80% it will detect, it will miss 20%. So all this malware and this sophisticated information is going to get past your defenses. So if you get infected, you have to be able to look at memory. So we got an actual slide here. So if you look at this, this is actually PS list from Sysinternals, Mark Rusinovich, now Microsoft owns it. And when you look here, you have all these different processes. Well, the process that's always like the hackers like is SVC host, because there's so many SVC hosts here. So when you look at that just simple process list, it's kind of hard to tell anything. But there's a Trojan in that process list. Now, some of you will recognize the NC for Netcat. So Netcat's there, right? But it's not the only one there. And when you look at it like this, it's hard to tell. But the key to understanding in memory if something's infected is what we call process antecedents, parent-child relationship. Because your parent-child relationship of SVC host, it's always a child of services. So when I go and look at the parent-process relationship, the process antecedents, look here. See how all these SVC hosts here are children of services? What about that SVC host? Who's his parent? No one. Can we have a process on a machine without a parent? Oh, that's an actual Trojan. That's the Netcat Trojan renamed to SVC host. But those are the types of things you have to do today because every time we get a signature to detect it, somebody goes and does what? Writes a new piece of code that's not detectable, right? And that's kind of that race back and forth. Okay. So process memory dumps. Our favorite one is Process Explorer. If you see here, you see how Netcat's right there? And then you've got all these SVC hosts that say generic host processes for Windows. And then it says Microsoft Corporation. Look at the Trojan down here. SVC host and description, nothing. And company name, nothing. All suspicious. So a lot of times this is what you can use to determine what happened on a machine. And again, you would go do this if following what I said, the ingress, egress, mainly the egress, if you start seeing egress traffic going out that shouldn't go out, you go analyze memory and look at it and see what's taking place. All right? Now, that was the good news. So now I'm going to show a simple demo video of how hacking tools can hide processes. Let's see. Is it going? It's like, anybody recognize that? Stonehenge, right? Anybody been there? Yeah? I used to live in England for 11 years. Doesn't want to run. It's such a good hacking tool, it doesn't run. Actually, it's running here, I think. Let me just get out of the way and let it run. Yeah, because it shows it's... Because this is old Windows XP. What I'm going to do is use a 2005 rootkit tool. There it goes. There's Process Explorer. We love Process Explorer, as I said. This is the new version. It's one of the best ones we have for looking at processes. And what we're going to do here is we're going to bring it up, and then we're going to use a tool from 2005 and hide processes. And as soon as we hide the processes, Process Explorer is not going to see it. Okay? So unfortunately, you can't see that great, but when you look here, all these processes and all that type of stuff, we're going to use a tool from 2005 called the FU Rootkit. The FU Rootkit was written by Jamie Butler, now the lead software engineer at Mandiant for Memorize. And what it does is it actually does direct kernel object manipulation. So when it actually unhooks the process, it does it in kernel memory, so it doesn't do the way traditional malware does. And even though he did it in 2005, we continue to see it today. Okay? Not very clear, is it? Let's do it live, maybe. Yeah, let me start the virtual machine up. I'll do that thing live so we can see it better, since that video is not coming up very good. So just give me a minute to start the virtual machine. I have lots of them. See, I told you I got lots of them. And they're all virtual machines. Most of them's out there on the CTF. So those competing, look at those names. That'll help you out. Okay, so while that starts, we'll go on and talk some more, since I don't like the way that's doing the video. So, what it'll show you, and when I demonstrate it, is sophisticated malware follows the same approach that Jamie Butler showed in 2005. That is, it hides its presence, so it's very difficult to be able to detect it. Okay? So when we have sophisticated malware, the perpetrators are writing this so it avoids them, right? So we got to analyze the raw image. We can do that manually, but has anybody looked at 2 or 3 gig of RAM in a hex dump? Anybody ever done that? Huh? You can, but it's a little bit easier to run a tool, yeah? So we like Memorize from Mandiant, Memorize. They got Redline too, but Redline I've had more problems. So yeah, tools work the best. So when you look at this one here, this one's a little bit easy because it's hooking. See this? See how it's got system service descriptor table hooks and then the IDT? These hooks here are actually how the malware gets into memory. And this is the hide EVR rootkit. Well, the FU rootkit from Jamie Butler doesn't use hooks. So it doesn't work the same way, yeah? So that's why traditional rootkits we still can find pretty easily. But the ones that are written in the new ones are much more difficult to do. Okay? Anybody using EMAT? Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit? Good, a couple of you. This is what you should be using today. It works. It works very well. Okay? And the version I use is an old version, 3.0, but it still works. I've been using it forever. I've taken every vulnerability for Internet Explorer in 2013 and exploited it and then turned on EMAT and stopped every one of them. Okay? And that's the old version. Now they got EMAT 5. the beta version out. I haven't used it yet. It's not perfect, but it looks for all those main attack vectors. So you should run it for sure on your critical segments. Remember what I said when I started? Inbound, outbound segments. That's the key. All right? Apply it one application at a time, but the new one, 5.0, does Java and everything out of the box. We used to have to do it the old way. It hardens legacy applications, and it gives you protection against known zero-day threats. And it's free, which is good. Yeah. And protection against Adobe. But like I said, use something else. Foxit's got a big vulnerability now, so maybe we'll use XPDF. We took 27 sample exploits with EMAT. This was when it first came out. It mitigated 22 just by implementing the actual first initial setups. All but one was mitigated. The one we couldn't mitigate? Firefox. Right? But again, this was the first early versions of EMAT. Now we're in EMAT 5, and it's doing a lot more stuff. Okay? So what you want to do is you want to put it on your endpoints and test it. But your critical segments, it's a good way to protect. Because we already said we know the users are going to click. This is what it does. I won't go into the code and the data execution prevention, exception handler, and address space layout, all that type of stuff. Okay? Maybe that one will play a little bit better. Can you see that one a little better? No? Why is this thing, is there a focus on this thing? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I can show it. I'll do the FU rootkit first, and I'll say. But what I do here is I take, everybody knows the use after free vulnerabilities? Internet Explorer keeps having those use after free vulnerabilities. I take the use after free vulnerabilities and put on, I exploit it first, then I put on EMAT, and I stop the exploit. Because that's what we want to be able to do. How many people's running Server 2008? Good, excellent. A lot of good security features on it. I still don't trust it enough to put it in the firewall architecture, but it's got some good stuff. So, network access protection. It's pretty good. PKI, right? Those types of things. But what I like about it is this read-only domain controller. Now I can do a read-only domain controller so I don't have to worry about somebody modifying the Active Directory store, right? Those types of things. So if you can't guarantee physical security, the read-only domain controller does good. All right? I also like the fact of a server core installation where you can install Windows without Windows. Anybody done any server core installations? That's the way you want to, I mean, if it's in a firewall architecture or wherever it's at, why do you need the Windows GUI environment? So, run a server core. Server 2012 uses a secure boot sequence taken from Windows 8. It uses the trusted platform module. So you can actually set up hardware-based protection so we don't have software that can inject and take over the boot block. Okay? DNSSEC is better today, and as I said, the server core. But in Server 2012, they do like we have in Unix and Linux and we've had for years, where you can start X Windows, get done, log out. In Server 2012, you can load the GUI, do what you need to do, and then unload the GUI. Can't do that in Server 2008. In Server 2008, once you have the actual core installation, it's the core installation. You can't do that. All right? Phones. We already talked about the attacks, huh? Mobile Trusted Platform Module was supposed to be out in 2012. We're still waiting for this. That's going to give you hardware-based protection on the phone. So we can do secure device identity, right? So we can identify the device using hardware-based protections. Then all those software-based attacks have a much more difficult time. All right? Problem is, we were supposed to have it in 2012. We still don't have it. Similar, as I said, Trusted Platform Module. And Apple. Who's got Apple? iPhones? Guess what? They didn't participate. They decided to do their own thing. I don't know what they're doing over at Apple. But they're not using the standard. Secure network architectures. So when we look at the internet, the external network here, those types of things, right? For a display, we got a screening router, we got a typical, what we call public DMZ, then the Bastion host running our firewall software or a device, a Cisco ASA, those types of things. And then internal router, so if this gets breached, we still have one more layer of protection before we get to our internal network. I prefer to do it this way. I put my DMZ here. The reason for this is, if I allow the actual DMZ off of here, which is the separate services subnet, you'll see some people do that, I have to allow people all the way in through my Bastion host. But if I do it this way, this DMZ, now the main traffic is right here, and nothing's going towards this direction. And the power of this is, in this DMZ, what I do is I set up protection so nothing can generate a connection. There's no SYN packets. Anything goes, can come in, it's a server, right? True server serving up things, but it can't go back this direction. So it can't generate and go out. So since it can't generate and go out, even if it gets compromised, it never goes anywhere. Okay? And then the only thing I put in here, there's the app servers there, is an IDS. Why do I put an IDS in here? Because if anybody sends any port 80 destination traffic, web, mail, anything else, it's going to be malicious because the services are all over here. Okay? Everybody follow that so far? And then what you do is you take this Bastion host and you bind all the ports that the inside users need on this side of the actual device. So what happens is internal network gets to do everything they need to do, but out here you've only got 2 ports open, usually 25 for SMTP and then DNS. And that's it. So from the external, that's all the risk you have of an attack, other than in this DMZ. But we took care of that because in this DMZ, you're not going to allow connections to generate going out. This really works well, and you should look at in your architectures, as I said, segmentation, isolation. And if you can't segment it, encrypt it. It's not perfect, but it helps protect it. As I said, bind ports inside the Bastion host. Okay? So I picked up Smoothwall Express. It's free. So you can actually set up a Smoothwall Express box pretty easy. It's free. They got a commercial version too. And I wanted to show you incoming. So as you look at incoming here for Smoothwall, what's incoming? What's allowed? Nothing. What should be allowed? Nothing until you make it in your policy. So by default, this is just a default installation of the Smoothwall firewall. By default, it doesn't allow anything ingress, nothing inbound. So this is why in your organizations you want to block all the inbound traffic and only allow what you have to. When you go back to the secure network architecture, you'll only allow those services to that segment that's got the DMZ. Nothing else goes anywhere else. That's robust, secure segmentation and isolation. All right, works very well. And then outbound, it's already set for you. So inbound was nothing, right? Outbound's already bound to the interface. So you need to do web, file transfer, those like that, right? Email and news, instant messaging. All that capability is here already, out of the box default install. I didn't have to configure anything. Doesn't allow anything in, and you really probably shouldn't allow anything in. Everything should be going out, right? Because as we showed the segmented architecture, the DMZ is going to be off of the other router. Now, one of the downsides is, if you put the DMZ off the other router, you don't have a Bastion host, a second layer of defense. Just put a Bastion host on that segment. And then you've got the same architecture you had the other way. Plus the throughput, because you're separating the actual traffic in your architecture, it will speed up your throughput. You'll have much better performance that way. All right? So we did that. Everybody remember the 2012 Olympics? Did you hear any hacks in the 2012 Olympics? Why? The day it was awarded to London, they built a security operations center following these practices we just talked about here. There were 6 major attack attempts, and they shut every one of them down following ingress, egress filtering, black hole routing. Okay? So all this stuff does work. As I said, you've got DNS firewalls you can look at, and how many of you are deploying internal honeypots? Honeypots is common, but put it inside. Put it inside. We do this at LAX. Why? Because if it's inside, nobody should ever send a packet to it. What's malware do? First thing it does, it sends out its foothold to its handler, the botnet, wherever it's at, and says, hey, I've got a machine. Then it looks around, right? So if you have an internal honeypot, that internal honeypot gets a packet, you get the source address of that packet, it's been compromised. The internal honeypot should never have any traffic to it. All right? So start looking at using internal honeypots or decoy machines. All right? Here's your sinkhole list for malware domains. Here's a whole list of different malware domains that you can keep track of to put into your device configuration. Because once you put them in, you can black hole any of these malware domains. All right? Black hole routing, we've already talked about. All packets without the source address of the DNS server or any proxy. Sinkhole domains, here's a host file script to block bad domains. comes from SANS. You can do a search for it, or you can shoot me an email. I can send you the actual link to it. You can download this, run the PowerShell script. It creates a host file for your Windows. You put it in a group policy object. You push it out to your clients. And anytime if they try to go to one of those malware domains that's in that list, it's black holed. Okay? And you can have alerts sent to you and everything else. So there's a lot of things we can do to make the job harder on the attackers. We know there's no such thing as perfect security, but we can make it pretty close. Okay. Now, let's see. I've got 10 minutes. Let's see if I can do this FU rootkit demo. The pressure's on. Probably blow it up, yeah? Blow up the different machines. So, there you got Process Explorer, right? There's Process Explorer. We love it. Works great. Does a good job. Oh, I even got a honeypot on here. KF sensor. There's a KF sensor honeypot on here. Didn't even know that. Okay. So, now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start calculator. Now remember, this is 2005. This code's from 2005. So now there's the calculator. As you see, everybody see it there in Process Explorer? Hopefully you can see in the back there. And if I do this, let's see. Yeah, it's Process ID 1648. There we go. Okay, so let me spread this out and try to get them side by side. Jamie Butler rootkit works very well. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the party, right? Oh, party's not ready yet? Good. So, command prompt, there it is. This is the FU rootkit. Jamie Butler did a really good job with it because all you have to do is, which is good, we like programmers that do this, FU-H. Well, that didn't look good. Oh, there it is. Okay, so, see that hide a process pH? So everybody's seeing this calculator. It's right here, right? It didn't go away. So now when I go here, and I give it the process ID of 1648, calculator there? Gone. See that? There's no calculator now. Now here's Process Explorer, right? The last thing we'll do, and then I'll see if anybody's got any questions. See how Process Explorer is 1484? Which means it's, can we hide it, Process Explorer from itself? And there it goes. It's gone. Yeah? Okay. As I said, that's 2005 code. That's why we got to put in endpoint security. We got to do that ingress, egress filtering because the malware uses that technique now. It's good that Jamie Butler went on to Mandiant and Fame and all that type of stuff. But the malware, the modern day malware, knows how to get by our signature-based detection. Okay? Any questions? It's like, no, we ain't got any questions. We want to go. We want to go have our party. Thank you very much. Go have your party.